every writer in Africa should strive to read. Now, this is a very, very special episode of The Talks. It is a tribute to one of my two idols in the creative world, in literature. And I noticed that he was probably the humblest of human beings you could ever meet. And I'm talking about Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Hello viewer, and welcome once more to Dul Johnson's Creative Talks. And if this is your very first time of tuning into this channel, I very specially welcome you, and I ask you to please subscribe, like, and always share. And I'd love to invite you to please watch out for the forthcoming episodes. And you are also able to watch backwards to the previous episodes. Now, this is a very, very special episode of The Talks for me, and I want to believe that it will be special for you as well. It is very special because it is a tribute to one of my two idols in the creative world, in literature. Now, I have always had two idols. I have already talked about the books of one of them in some previous episodes. I'm now going to talk about the very first of my idols, whom I encountered before any other person as far as influence is concerned. This is apart from Kamaralaye, who inspired me with his story to want to write my own. I'm talking about those that I have molded my life along the path that they have led me. And I'm talking about Ngugi wa Thiong'o, one of Africa's most famous, most important, I should say, writers. He passed away recently, and I'm dedicating this episode to him. I want to talk about him. I want to talk about my encounters with him. Now, I've had two encounters with Ngugi, I should put it this way. The first, of course, is through his books. So without meeting him, I had encountered him through his books. Even before I encountered Kamaralaye, as early in my life in secondary school, I had to perform. I had read two of his plays. They were short plays. So the two plays of Ngugi that I encountered very early in my secondary school life are This Time Tomorrow and The Black Hermit. One of them had acted in, I am not very sure whether it was The Black Hermit or This Time Tomorrow. Unless I go back to the text, I won't be able to remember which one. But this was around 1971. Yes, I think 1971. That was when I encountered Ngugi's literature for the very first time. Now, I just participated in acting after reading, but that was it. I didn't get to interact with him until when I was in the university. That was when I started reading Ngugi as a writer. Now, first with Weep Not Child. If you are familiar with Ngugi, of course, I just read out the titles. I'm sure you can connect back. Weep Not Child, The River Between, A Grain of Wheat. Those were the very first three that I read. And I think that the later ones came out when I was already, moving through my studies. But in my first undergraduate days, these were the first books I encountered. And I had read them, and they had made quite an impression on me. Now, what impression did they make on me? What I do today my approach to literature today and all the efforts I've been making to ask my viewers to read is because Ngugi has made me realize that the writer's job, the artist, maybe I should say the African writer or the artist in Africa, as Achebe once said, is the property of the society, is the property of the community from which you come. Which is to say, your writing has to have a purpose. Now, Ngugi has shaped my thinking because he has made me to realize that as a writer, I should be a solver of my society's problems, of my community's problems. And that I started to see in the first 3 books. These books showed me how a writer can be committed through the characters that he portrays or that they portray in their work. And in the very first one that I read, With No Child, I could see the commitment of the characters, especially the main character's brother, who had gone into the struggle for Kenyan land, that had been taken away by the white people, the British in particular. And a grain of wheat, in fact, showed me by far the kind of commitment that an individual can go into, sacrifice your life for your community. The character of Mugo, of Kihika, and many Gikonyo, in that novel. Now, those started to shape my thinking, to shape my own perception, and the way I should, deal with the stories that I handle. Subsequently, of course, Petals of Blood came. It was one of those I studied. Later on, The Devil on the Cross, and later on, much later, there was the Wizard of the Crow. Now, and of course, there are also plays that is Detained, his prison memoir, or diary or memoir. And then, of course, there are plays also, apart from those early ones that were not as, significant in terms of the pursuit of his purpose as what you would see in The Trial of Dedan Kimathi, and then in I'll Marry When I Want. Now, outside this, Ngugi has produced a whole lot of critical works, that every writer in Africa should strive to read. There are quite a number. I cannot give you the titles. I can just mention a few. Those are the ones that I read in my early days. Homecoming writers in politics. Later on, there were things like Globalectics. There are quite a number. The titles can't just come. There are like 15, 20 of them. There's quite a lot for you to read if you care to check. Now, these works will tell you the kind of mindset Ngugi has. Okay, this is what we mean by commitment. When you read Ngugi's works, of course, you will see, even though Marxism is no longer in vogue, but the ideologies that shaped Ngugi's mind, perhaps when he was growing, and when he was writing, and up to the point he died, liberation was foremost on his mind. Whether it was done through Marxist revolutionary methods or African communalism or whatever method, it didn't matter. What matters to Ngugi, or what mattered to Ngugi, was that the African, both mind and land, needed to be liberated. But as I said, these were things I encountered, or these were thoughts that I cultivated as I read his works. In his works. Much later, I was to encounter the man. Immediately, I had finished my master's dissertation on Ngugi's works, because I had really fallen in love with his work, and I saw his work as a chronicle of the history of Kenya and the struggle to free the Kenyan people, the Kenyan mind, and the land. Right. So, in 1983, I encountered the man live. Fortunately, I was somewhere, and there was a conference on Ngugi. And when I discovered, I said to myself, oh, precisely this was in London, by the way. So I said to myself, I must attend this conference, because this man has influenced me quite a lot. So indeed, the very first plays that I wrote as an undergraduate, things like Power on Justice, things like Child of Two Worlds, were dealing with the kind of themes that I had read in Ngugi's works. In fact, I was, in my small world, some kind of a revolutionary, wanting or believing that I could use my place to upturn, the things that I saw as not helping the country to grow forward, to move forward, to grow, to develop. Things like corruption, things like impunity, that was, those were the things I was confronting in my early plays. And these were based on the impact that Ngugi's work had on me. So I now went to the conference and I met Ngugi as a person. And I noticed that he was probably the humblest of human beings you could ever meet. The humblest of human beings, really. When I talked with him, this is a man that had written probably 15 or more books. I had not written anything, not to think of publishing. Whatever I had written were drafts of my undergraduate work. But he treated me as a writer, treated me as a person, and we sat down and had quite some very good conversation. In fact, he even invited me to attend a conference that he was to give a talk in Nigeria much later in that year. But of course, I was then a small civil servant. I didn't have the opportunity to travel around, so I couldn't attend that conference. So that was my encounter. Now, as I said, it was much later in life, when I was doing PhD, that I now went back to Ngugi and I did a chapter on his work, now with a more advanced mind. And I continued to see new works coming, channeling my thoughts to see if I too can write in a way that my works can shape my society. My works can bring some change to the society. I am not saying that I have achieved anything near what he has done. No. I think I'm still playing around. I do not think that I'm going to measure up to Ngugi's zeal and the thrust of his work that ushers you to want to push the revolution to a happening point. Of course, he has passed on, but this is not to say that that revolution is not going to happen. It's the same thing that Amma has done for me. That is why I use Amma's works. I was hoping to eventually come back to Ngugi, but now that he has passed, I think I should use this opportunity to sing his praises and to tell you, dear writers, that, and readers, of course, not just writers, because, as I have said in previous videos, reading is probably as important as writing. You see, we say everybody has a story, but not everybody can tell their story. But of course, everybody can read. And it is the reading that is more important. I've emphasized this time and again. It is said that readers are leaders, and therefore a society that reads is a society that will definitely make progress. I think we should do some research. I mean, each and every one of you can search for yourself. Find out what societies read, and you will see the kind of society they are, the people are. This is the point. If you have 75% of the people reading, what it means is that 75% of the people have a sense of leadership. And that means that the society is going to be saner than those societies that don't read. Indeed, I'm going to dovetail this thought into a little more episode, about one short episode about reading. I think it is, I owe you, my viewers, that capturing of the emphasis that I've been making on reading, just to make sure that societies, whether it is my own society alone or some other societies that have not developed the culture of reading, should actually do that. And when I say reading, even though I have said before that you should be able to read every other thing, I want to emphasize that reading stories is probably the most important thing to do, because stories are the things that develop the human being, and they are the things that point us to the future that we want to go to. You see, stories move us from the past, bring us to the present, and point us to the future, or help us to see how we can shape our future. So if we do not read stories, we are not going to develop as we want to. I urge you now to my dear mentor and idol, Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Travel well. You have done excellently. You have left enough for me and for other readers who are coming behind, and for other readers who are present, those who have not heard your name before. I am emphasizing it. Those who have heard your name and who have not come in contact with your work, I am asking you, my dear viewers, check out Ngugi, check out his works, check out the creative works, and check out the critical essays. You will be the better for it, and your society will be the better for it. The smaller society and the larger society will be the better for it, and indeed the world will be the better for it if we are able to follow the footsteps of, and not just the footsteps, but the teachings of my teachers, of our teachers like Ngugi and the others who are working in the same direction with him. I want to leave you now with this request, that please ensure that from now on you begin to look for Ngugi's works, and that you can read at least one every 1 or 2 months. Thank you very much.